Hey, welcome back to Stories with Dave. Tonight, looking at part one of chapter 9 of Hokey Pokey. Tweek, and ye shall find. Finding Jesus was nowhere near as simple as they'd made it out to be in Sunday school. Code Talker, ever more comfortable in his new role of autoerotic evangelist, even took the initiative to set up an old bun coffee percolator in the office and anteroom to encourage more frequent visits from the picketing church ladies. Between the coffee in the morning and the tea in the heat of day, thought, and the inevitable return trips to use the little church ladies' room, one of them was bound to find Jesus. Each day he watched them pass the box beside the desk on which he'd arranged a number of the smaller boxes, the individual resale boxes, the ones that said Jesus lengthwise, in wonderfully illuminated, slightly embossed text. He left one of those boxes open by accident, such that just Jesus' olive-complected tip peeped from the top, like the presaged apocalyptic grin of a sacred sexual jack-in-the-box, to prevent anyone mistaking it for anything other than what it was, a long, thick, olive-complected, waterproof penis, with natural features and realistic irregularities that float and shift with your every movement. Then he braced himself for the inevitable mushroom clouds and flamethrower plumes of righteous indignation. Never before, he thought, had anyone struck a match quite so close to a powder keg of piety. Nothing. All that first morning, the ladies paraded in and out for cups of coffee and ginger snaps, and while he believed he had caught one or two of them taking more than a passing glance at the display room, none of them seemed to notice the peekaboo Jesus dildo he'd left out in the open, right on the desk. During a lull in the traffic, Code Talker repositioned the open unit so it stuck just slightly out beyond the edge of the desk. Then, as each lady came through to get a cup of tea or to use the bathroom, he'd subtly herd them toward it by walking beside them on the opposite side and making small talk. He tried it on Candy and on Jenny Anderson, but it felt much too forced. The look on Mrs. Anderson's face alone was enough to cause Code Talker to abandon that particular angle of approach. As the day wore on, Code Talker forgot all about his side project. There were customers to assist, after all. More and more of them every day. When he had customers in the house, he tried to stay in the display room as much as possible as a loss prevention measure. He'd suggested installing cameras, but Spencer said he wanted to establish a behavioral baseline from which to engage in more precise market analyses and revenue forecasting, which is how he once heard an MBA describe the retail dynamic that a comedian might have described thus: read the room. So in short, Spencer wanted to read the room before he made any further important changes. Code Talker was more than satisfied with that approach. He didn't mind watching customers. He enjoyed it more than just about any other spectator sport. People show their ass around a dildo store in the same way they do around a graveyard, he said one evening to Nipper back at the Honeycomb Hideout. They can't help it. The funny thing is, though, the ones who try to be inconspicuous. It's like they think that if they're really quiet, they'll become invisible, and then I won't see them comparing the ribbing on 3 competing brands of butt plug. The butt plug gag ball set, man. They all play that game. It gets so quiet, sometimes I get tempted to F with them, you know? The sound effects and shit. Black. What's that one? Anal beads. How come you know what them sound like? I don't, but think about it. Have you ever looked at that shit, man? Not really, not up close. It's unsettling. You can hear the sound of them in your mind as soon as you look at them. Serious. And now Spence has me taking care of that damn pug of his on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And do you know what that thing's favorite new toy is? A butt plug. Kid you not, bro. Scared the shit out of me when I first saw it. I was getting some iced tea ready for Mrs. Goolsby and those church ladies, and here comes old Buford dragging that effing butt plug. That damn thing's almost as long as he is. Which butt plug is it? There, now, see? It's just effing surreal when you can ask a question like that and not even be joking around, Code Talker said, shaking his head. It was the generic brand, the cheapest one. You know, the white thing that looks like some kind of orthopedic equipment. Oh, yeah. Okay. And it's kind of diamond shaped. Exactly. Yeah, man. Nipper said that'd be messed up. Hey, speaking of messed up, listen here. He repositioned himself so he was sitting at the lotus position at the edge of the front porch, and then he closed his eyes slowly, resolutely, demonstrated his new subliminal entrancement tool for anyone listening at that end of Maddox Avenue. Whoa, shh. That sounds exactly like a vibrator inside a vagina. How the hell are you doing that? Practice, man. Been practicing all week. If I make this here noise from across the store, siesta, I can trap them in a spell, and they don't even know it until they's out there talking to you across the counter at Hokey's, buying them a nice big old dildo. It really works? Well, I reckon it works better than a pug dragging a butt plug across the room. Code Talker had to concede that point. Still, if there were ever a context in which it seemed natural to watch a pug drag a butt plug across the display room floor, that context was Hokey Pokey. By the end of its first month of business, in fact, a pug dragging a butt plug seemed a little run of the mill. Hokey Pokey had already attracted a couple of regular customers who were even more irregular to behold in their own little ways. Hov Lane Harry was one of those. Henry was one of those. He was an old bearded curmudgeon of a long haul driver who wore faded coveralls and a starched baseball cap that said cat, and he bore all the telltale physical signs of a long life lived on its back under big machines. His hands and forearms had the permanent artificial tan you get only from machine oil and grease, and he walked with a slight bend at the waist that came from too much lifting, too much squatting, too much sitting, too much. Old Henry was too much. It was clear right away that he wasn't just a browser. Hey, Yin's doing all right? Fair to Midland? Yes, sir. Yin's doing all right? I am, thank you. I see what all I'm after already, he said. He made a gimpy beeline for the blow-up dolls. If I can answer any questions you have, just holler now, Code Doctor said. Well, said the old man. That's all he said, but it was a well with a pause and a question mark attached. What you got? He had Code Talker girl. He had the country girl box down. Seemed to be reading the box. I'm looking for a dummy. I drive big rigs, but this is for personal, he said. For the express lanes, he added. Oh, I gotcha. You want it to look like you've got a passenger. That's right. That's the general ideal. Shoot, any of those will work for that, Code Talker said, gesturing at the stacks of boxes, and then, as an afterthought, added, depending on where you're headed. Help me take this one out of the box so I can look at it, said the man. He already had the box open and was lifting out a sealed, clear plastic wrapping that contained the deflated doll. All that showed from the top of the wrapping was the doll's face. It looked like a piece of bedpan art inspired by Picasso. Its bright red, paper thin, super exaggerated lips parted garishly. Want an F? I'm not really allowed to take that out of the wrapping since it's sealed, but that should give you an idea. Can't we take her? Can't we just take her out? I just want to get a look at her and make sure she's the right one. Well, like I said, since you're just using this for a dummy passenger, any of these will do, really. If you select the Nubian goddess, though, I'd encourage you to avoid traveling anywhere in Cumberland County, except maybe Fairfield Glade. Fentress County either, for that matter. They may not understand. The old timer shifted and hemmed and hawed. He replaced Country Girl and took down the office assistant. Then he took down the Nubian goddess. I sure would feel better about spending all this money if I could have a look at her, he said. By this point, the humor had begun to drain out of the situation. Code Talker had business to tend to, so he finally said, Look it, man. It doesn't matter if you take it out. They're all just like this. And he reprised the sex doll pose that had unnerved Nipper so badly when they first opened the shop. Arms stuck out forward at 90-degree angles to provide that loving embrace, mouth gaping like some psychoerotic reinterpretation of Monk's The Scream. That did it. I'll just take the country girl, the old timer said, and grabbed the box and headed back for the register. Thanks for joining me for part one. of chapter 9, Tweek and Ye Shall Find. Tune in a day or so for part 2.